really good leaders generally spend a lot of time moving around. So they spend a lot of time walking the floor, going to office, lots of impromptu meetings, lots of, sort of casual conversation. And good leaders, I believe, are always listening.
Our guest today is Christopher Wein, COO of Equiton Developments, a seasoned real estate leader with over 25 years of experience across Canada and the US, leading projects from master plan communities to skyscrapers. Beyond his impressive operational expertise, Christopher is a recognized innovator in sustainable building solutions and a passionate contributor to Canadian philanthropy, earning honors like the King Charles III Coronation Medal, and he's also on Calgary's top 40 under 40 list. On today's episode, we dive into what it takes to build the right team chemistry, Christopher's philosophy for putting the right systems in place, and why having a true power player on your team can transform your business. We also explore his views on productivity and what it means to play all out in both leadership and life. Whether you're scaling a company or refining your team's performance, this conversation is packed with actionable insights for any COO striving for excellence. Let's dive in. We are now live with Christopher. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah, we were just kind of chatting. You have such a wide range of experience. You've been COO, CEO, president, and have been involved in this type of work for about 25 years. So there's a lot we're going to get to dive into today. But first, why don't you just give us a little bit of an overview of the company that you're with now? What do you do and who do you serve?
Sure. So I'm currently Chief Operating Officer of Equiton Developments. Equiton Developments is basically a private equity development company. We have about 18,000 investors across North America, mainly Canadian. And what Equiton Developments does is we actually take that money and we build developments, condo developments, townhouse developments, purpose-built rental, and the returns coming from those projects go back to the investors. And this is how it actually works out quite well, because in many cases, the investors are earning returns of 21% annually, which is fantastic. As well, Equiton also has a very large rental portfolio. So we have about 5,000 rental units, again, across Canada. And that portfolio is something that we continue to grow. And that's a long-term portfolio. So we plan on building that and continuing to grow it over the next 25 years.
Awesome. Who is kind of the ideal investor for you guys?
It's really anybody. So we have a combination of, we have retail investors, so people who are looking to earn sort of returns anywhere from 8 to 12% if they're in the apartment fund, all the way up to 21% if they're in one of the development funds. So a lot of people take some of their savings or take their RSP money and so on at the retail level. Then we have larger investors, institutional investors, large high net worth people. So it's really a full range. That's why we have approximately 18,000 investors, because an investment can be anywhere from $25,000-$50,000 all the way up to $10 million.
What do you think people should be looking for? Because this is something I've been thinking about for a little while, but I haven't really made any investments into. But what would you say to someone that hasn't made an investment like this yet in terms of looking for the right place to put their money? What are the factors that someone should be looking for? And specifically for you guys, what are some of those kind of the draws for people to be investing with you?
Sure. I think there's a few things. So one, you want to look at the track record. So the company, we just celebrated our 10th anniversary. So you want a company that's established. Thank you. You want a company that has an independent board, has good governance. Is following all the proper sort of procedures and policies that you want with an investment. Of course, as a private equity company, we're governed by the securities commissions of the various provinces across Canada. So we make sure that we're fully compliant at all times, and we have great sort of policies and procedures. And then beyond that, it's really the nature of the investment. So again, these are real estate investments. The great thing about real estate investments is real estate long term has always been a very solid investment. And the majority of our real estate holdings are residential in nature. because residential real estate, really across North America, both in Canada and the U.S., is growing as the populations continue to grow. We're fortunate to be in Canada. You're fortunate to be in the U.S. These are two amazing countries and two amazing democracies that I think people from all around the world still would love to move to and reside in. So I think that's why we continue to see positive growth and positive immigration with both countries, and we need more housing and we need more real estate.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very safe investment, and it's a good long-term investment. And then beyond that, the last thing is to really look at where the real estate's located. So we have real estate across the country. The majority of our real estate is concentrated in the Greater Toronto area, and Toronto has been one of the fastest growing cities in North America for the last 25 years. So again, pretty safe place to invest your dollars.
I know living in Austin, I cannot go anywhere without seeing construction, new builds, signs of coming soon. It's crazy. I think I don't know where Austin is ranked right now, but it's gotta be one of, like, the fastest growing cities in America, I would imagine.
Yeah, Austin actually is doing very well. So, in one of my previous leadership roles with another company, we had a very large U.S. presence. So we were in 15 states across America doing developments, real estate developments, and Texas was one of my favorite places to do real estate. And both Austin and Dallas, very, very robust markets, fantastic markets,
Cool.
great places to live.
Good to know. Yeah. Maybe I'm like, I think I'm gonna dip my toes in here soon. Well, so you've been with this company for 11 months. What was it about after 25 years of experience? What was it about this company that stood out to you that made you want to take a role here?
Sure. There's a few things. One, the ownership team. So there's two co-founders that co-founded it 10 years ago. A woman and a gentleman. They're fantastic industry veterans, and their vision is really to grow a very sort of progressive, positive real estate company. And really, their vision is that every Canadian, and again, it's not limited to Canadians, but every person should have the ability to invest in real estate. The challenge of investing in real estate, for instance, if we can't all be developers because it takes an enormous amount of money and capacity to be a developer. We can't all go out and buy an apartment building because again, it's an enormous amount of money. So then, how do you invest in real estate? Well, that was sort of the vision, is to say, hey, we can be that vehicle. So even if you only have $25,000 or $50,000 to invest over the next several years, you can still be a real estate investor, and you can still get the returns that the big institutions get by owning a bunch of apartment buildings, or that private developers get from developing condo towers and condo buildings and housing and so on and so forth. So that vision really appealed to me because I do think it's sort of a very democratic approach to investment. And then, if people, sort of research our firm and look at our website and so on and see the developments we're doing, it also gave me the ability to really drive high quality development. So we want to do really, beautiful buildings in great neighborhoods and really, design and build homes that people will be proud to live in. And happy to live in, and that's a great vision, and it's a vision I share with the founders, and it was just a great match. So,
Awesome. And in terms of that match, what are your responsibilities like day to day?
Day to day, I'm responsible to basically oversee the operations of the development company. And within the development company, we have sort of finance division, we have a sales and marketing division, we have a customer care division, we have a development division, which is acquiring land, getting entitlements and zoning and so on. We have product design, and then of course we have construction. So we do our own construction in house. So basically, all aspects of development, from first acquiring land all the way through to delivering a finished building to a bunch of happy homeowners.
In your first 90 days coming in, because it's a fairly how big is your team?
My team, so the overall company is about 250 people, and the development team in particular is about 35 people.
Okay, got it. So when you came in, there's obviously, 10 years behind it and a decent sized team. What was that initial 90 days like? Like when you came in, were you immediately starting to change things, get in the weeds? Were you just observing? What did that kind of ramp up look like?
So it's in the first 90 days, whenever I approach a new position, I kind of, on my 90-day plan, I kind of have sort of, I divide it into three. So in the first 30 days, it's really, observation. So let's see what we're dealing with and, let's see what all the different parts and pieces are and the different players and kind of the culture. And then the next 30 days is really developing, my strategy for moving forward. And then the last 30 days is really starting to implement that strategy. So I like to be in a position where within 90 days, I've actually come in, assessed, audited, and then made changes so that people can actually see true progress in that first 90 days. I think, one of the things that's interesting is a lot of executives take want to just observe for the full 90 days. I think it's too long. I think if you really want to, demonstrate your value to an organization, you need to actually start making changes, positive changes, within that 90-day period, not after that 90-day period.
Mm-hmm. In the 11 months, or I guess maybe the 9 months of those last 30 days, the 90 days that you started to really put in some change, what were the priorities that you focused on?
Sure. So there was sort of three main priorities, maybe four to be exact. So number one, making sure we had the right team members. So I made some adjustments to the team, both directions. So there were some departures, and then there were some additions, and I think that's really important. And it's not just making sure that you have the right talent on the team, but also that you have the right chemistry. So talent is great, and we all want the best and most talented people, but it's also important that talented people can work together, and that there's a chemistry and that there's a shared vision, and sometimes that isn't the case. And I think that shared vision and having that team chemistry is the most important part of leadership. So I made some changes there and got the team where I wanted them to be within that first 90 days. Number two was again making sure that we actually had a vision. So working with the team and myself to define what our vision was, for the short term, midterm, and long term, and where we wanted to position ourselves in the marketplace with respect to the type of product we wanted to build, the quality positions we wanted to have, and really, kind of uh, deciding what our true value proposition to the consumer was. Number three was, you know, uh, making sure that that we had the right systems in place. So we actually implemented some new software and some new systems, again, to make sure that we could be as efficient as possible, especially between the different departments. And then finally, the fourth thing was really, working on the branding. So I'm a big believer in corporate branding and making sure that your brand, your website, your brand, your vision, basically your mission statements all align with where it is you want to go and really where the team also wants to go. So we made a bunch of changes. So we launched a new website. We launched we updated our brand. We didn't change our name, but we updated the brand, updated the tagline, and really, kind of changed the narrative about who we are and where we want to be.
There's a couple things we could dive into from that. Thank you. That was so succinct and clear. I loved it. The chemistry part, I've never heard anyone specify on the chemistry, and I think that's so important. I was just, like, going back through all the memories in my mind of teams I've been on where everyone, I mean, this is at a point where one of the companies I was at, we maybe had, like, 50, 60 employees where I really started to see this shift, was we had a bunch of A players, but the chemistry started to change. And then there started to become some toxicity and, just different things that were happening that weren't happening when we were smaller and everyone was really aligned and kind of same vibe. So I'm curious, like, what are the one or two things if someone's listening right now and they're like, how do I know if my team has good chemistry or not? How would you walk them through figuring that out?
Sure. I think, well, I think one of the most important things is making sure that everyone understands their value and the value that they bring, and more importantly, the value that their teammates bring. So I think that, I was, when I was young, I did a lot of sports and I was, sort of an athlete for a long time before I got into business. And the big thing with good teams in sports is good teams is where everybody understands their role and they all support each other for to do their role. And to your point, like the A players, often teams with big budgets will, they'll recruit the best baseball players in the league. The best hitter, the best pitcher, and the team will actually not do very well. And I'll be like, why isn't the team doing well? Well, because it's a bunch of individual superstars that don't know how to work together. And then you'll have another team where it's like, oh, there's really no superstar on the team, but the team's doing amazing. How's that possible? It's because, again, they have chemistry. So, it's similar in business. So in business, when you have your teams, it really is about understanding, does the head of sales and marketing work with the head of construction? And does the head of construction work with the head of finance? Or do they all compete with each other for space? Or do they all sort of compete with each other for importance? And when they do that, which happens often, that's not chemistry. Whereas when they understand that, hey, I'm the finance person, I'm here to support all the other, leaders within the team. I'm the marketing person. I'm here to make sure that we have the best marketing. I'm not going to tell the construction person how to run their division or the customer care division how to run their division. So it's really that idea that, I always liken it to like in a lot of corporate retreats. One of the most common things is, oh, let's do a tug of war. And the team that wins the tug of war is where everybody pulls with their own weight at the same time. And then they win. And it's not, they don't need to be the strongest. They don't need to be the biggest. They just all need to pull in the same direction at the same time. And that's really what chemistry is all about.
That's a great analogy. Another thing that I'm curious about is when you said in those first 90 days, some of those changes were letting people go and hiring new people on. What is your approach or methodology to deciding if someone should go or stay when, you're just coming in, these are all new people to you? How do you make sure that you make an accurate decision, you have all of the information needed?
Sure. So I think one of the things that's really important, again, in the role of leadership, is you need to have really strong antenna. So, and I think what's interesting is really good leaders generally spend a lot of time moving around. So they spend a lot of time walking the floor, going to office, lots of impromptu meetings, lots of, sort of casual conversation. And good leaders, I believe, are always listening. So I think one of the challenges is often in leadership, you'll have you have leaders who very much structure things. So we have structured meetings, we have structured one-on-ones. You see them once a week or once every couple of weeks, and aside from a formal meeting, there's really no interaction whatsoever. And maybe they're behind a locked door somewhere or a closed door in a closed office, and that's okay. But it's hard to really get a feel for things. So early in my career, when I first started, into sort of senior leadership, maybe 25 years ago, my staff were like, "Do you have the office bugged?" And I'm like, "What do you mean bugged?" They're like, "Well, you just seem to know everything. You know what everybody's talking about. You kind of know what's going on, like with the rumors and social and all that stuff." And it's like, yeah, because I walk around, I pay attention, I listen, I observe you guys, I observe what you're doing, and I observe that the three of you went for lunch, and those two carpool together, and all. It's like, wow, that's very perceptive. It's like, well, that's the whole point. Is if you have that level of perception, then as a leader, you very quickly can see the teammates that don't quite fit, or the teammate that no one ever wants to go to lunch with, or the teammate that's always, telling you what, how important they are and everything that they've done, as opposed to coming into my office and saying, hey, the team accomplished this. It's like, oh no, I did all these things. It's like, you couldn't have done all those things. You must have had help from the team. So why are you trying to sell me on how great you are instead of talking about how great your team is? So, and it's similar even with you know, kind of uh, kind of taking responsibility for when things go wrong. So that's the other big thing that I believe in. Like I always take responsibility for my team, and I get not frustrated, but I'm disappointed when I'll have someone come in, especially a vice president or a senior vice president, and try and tell me something isn't their fault. And, it's not me, it's the so and so made a mistake and so on and so forth. It's like, like, I don't care. I just want to solve the problem. So if there's a problem, come to me with a solution. Don't come to me trying to, kind of cover your butt, so to speak. So it's the little things like that you very quickly perceive. And once you perceive those things, you're like, okay, now I have to determine, is this person coachable? Can I teach them to not behave that way? Or are they always going to behave that way? And if they're always going to behave that way, they're never going to have the chemistry that I need. And I determined that pretty quickly. And to be honest, from a coachability perspective, and I don't want to sound ageist, but at a certain point, people do become a little uncoachable. So I think, people in their 20s and early 30s are highly coachable. I think when you start to get into your late 40s and late 50s, pretty tough to change someone's character if they've behaved a certain way for the last 25 years.
What do you think is what's the sweet spot for a manager who maybe they do have some problems with the people on their team, but they're like in the process of they're taking ownership of their team and there's still mistakes happening. What's the sweet spot of them communicating to you in terms of the responsibility? Like, do you believe that they should take 100% responsibility, or what part of the things that are happening in the team do you actually feel is relevant for you to be hearing about?
So I think the key is people need to take responsibilities for solutions and outcomes. And that's something that I've always been very focused on. So if you're a vice president and you have team members under you and you're responsible for, let's say you're the sales and marketing vice president, then you're responsible for solutions and success within sales and marketing, and you're responsible to ensure that if there are issues or mistakes, that you find corrections for those and you find ways to get beyond that. As far as individual responsibilities, I worry less about, hey, you made this mistake or this you did wrong. I don't really believe in wrong. What I believe in is continuous improvement. So, and let's sort of look at what happened on this particular case, and is there a way that we could improve that? And if there is, let's figure out how to improve it for next time. I do think people learn, like I'm a big believer that you learn through positive reinforcement, not through negative reinforcement. So, again, back when I was doing sports and athletics when I in my youth, the big thing was always in sports, especially, you need to, like, if you tell the pitcher to throw more strikes, they'll throw more strikes. If you tell the pitcher stop throwing so many balls, then what sticks in their head is less balls, more strikes, and they actually throw more balls because the negative stays in their head. So when you tell someone not to do something, they actually are more likely to repeat it. Whereas don't tell people what not to do, tell people what you want them to do. So give them the positive reinforcement. I would like more of this. Okay, more of this, and that's what sticks in their head. Because as soon as you give someone a negative, it never leaves their brain. So
This is a kind of a maybe a little bit of a silly example, but it's just the stage of life that I'm in is like I've been learning a lot around my like in dating relationships because I've been so entrepreneurial and if we're using like the terms that are being thrown around now as like masculine energy, feminine energy. I've for many years been very driven, like just go, go, go and telling people what to do. And so dating has been there's been a lot for me to learn into coming back into just softening and letting men lead. And one of the books that I read that actually really, really impacted my experiences so much was around positive reinforcement. So if I want something to change, instead of being like, I really don't like when you do this, it's like fine when they do it the way that you like, and then just, really appreciate that. And once I started to play with that, it was mind-blowing, the change that I saw and how I felt and how the man that I was with felt. And yeah, I've seen that in team too, but anyways, it's just like, something that came up for mind for me because it works in all areas, not just in business. The other thing that you mentioned was around vision and getting clear with your team on that from short term and long term. To what degree do you think it's important to bring team into vision versus just the executive team writing the vision? Because Cameron has a book called Vivid Vision. It's amazing. He's partnered with Jen Hootie. They actually help companies get clear on what that is in 3-year increments. And sometimes, it's just the owner, sometimes it's the executive team. What is your personal philosophy on that?
So I think I prefer a larger team. So, but what happens with a larger team, it's sort of a two-part answer. So the initial vision, so the initial direction should come from leadership. So from executive leadership. So when I'm looking at the vision of Equiton Developments, I'm initially thinking, okay, this is where I believe we should go, and this is how we should position ourselves at a very, very high level, like 30,000 feet. And as soon as I have that, I want to then bring in the team to be like, okay, this is what I'm thinking, but this is very, 30,000 foot. Let's now dig into this as a team collectively so that everybody feels like they take ownership of the vision and everybody's had a part of it. So you can't start with a blank piece of paper. So I think that's where, sometimes groupthink can be a mistake. So you don't want to bring in 25 people and say, we have no vision. Let's whiteboard this. Everybody start throwing out things. That doesn't make any sense. It's sort of like when, you get on a plane, you kind of want the pilot to have some indication of where the plane's going. You don't want to just leave it to the passengers. Hey, where should we go?
Right.
But then with respect to, okay, we know where we're trying to get to, but now as a group, we can talk about how fast do we want to get there? How aggressively do we want to get there? At what costs do we want to take to get there? Like there's just so many variables in actually achieving a vision that's where you can really engage a group. So, and that's the key is engaging them within the variables as to, okay, we kind of have, that sort of peg on the wall, but there's 1,000 ways to get there. So let's together collectively decide for us as a team with chemistry, what's the best way for us to get to that peg.
So what I'm hearing in that is it sounds like at the top, you guys are kind of creating the high level where you want it to go, and then you bring in the team so that they still feel part of it, sense of responsibility for, like I said, the variables or the pieces that actually get to be built to make that happen.
Exactly. Yeah. And what's great about that is that the other thing too is again with large teams and with different responsibilities, the variables for each sort of division and each, like the variables around how construction is going to achieve the vision, the collective vision, versus how finance is going to achieve the vision, versus how customer care is going to achieve the vision. They're all going to go about it a different way because of the responsibilities that they have are different. So they have different approaches to how they're going to get there. And that's why you want to engage them all. Because the other thing that's really important is you want always people to feel a sense of empowerment. And if you explain to people where we want to go, but then let them decide for themselves how they're gonna sort of take that journey, you get far better, results, and you get better productivity, and you get more sense of ownership than if you're simply dictating, this is where we're gonna go, and by the way, these are the exact steps you have to take to get there, and these are my steps, and you must take them, and I'm gonna double check if you don't take them, and you're gonna be in trouble. Like that, nobody want like people don't want to be dictated to
I
at any level, all the way down to your admin assistant and your receptionist doesn't want to be dictated. They want to have an understanding of, okay, what's my responsibilities and what are my areas of influence? Great. And what is it that success looks like? Great. Okay, now I can sort of choose my own adventures how I'm going to get there. Yes, absolutely. And that way everybody gets to let their personalities come out, which is also really important. I think the you know I think what's interesting, we always talk, I'm sort of changing the subject slightly, but we always talk about, the most important thing for employees. Oh, I think it's their pay package. And every single survey always says that's not the case, that pay is not number one. And number one really is having a sense of ownership, having a sense of empowerment, having a feeling that they're making a difference, and having a feeling that they, in their individual way, are contributing, that they're not a robot, that they're bringing their own character and their own personality and their own ideals to the job, and they're allowed to express those things for the greater good of the company. And if you can accomplish that, that's what makes for happy people.
mm, I love that. It's, bringing back a memory for me where I really can, like, see this point, which I didn't really reflect on until you were sharing it, but when I was building Closers.io, we were maybe 5 or 6 people, and we were really small at the time, and I texted Cole, the owner, and I said, I think we need some core values. And he's like, wow. He's like, I literally was working on these last night. And I remember asking him, like, well, are we all going to be involved in making them? And he called me and he said, he's like, I really, really value your perspective. And I think it's important that I create the core values because this is, I don't know how long different people are going to be here and where it's going to go. And I think it's really important that they are aligned with where I want to go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring them to you. And in terms of how they're phrased, how we're going to define them, I really, really want your perspective on that. And at first I was kind of bummed because I was his right-hand person, second hire. I was like, I want to be a part of like creating the core values. And I really admired the way that he did it. And it felt really good to me. Like he brought me the 5 core values that he came up with. A couple of them I was kind of like, we'll know about. And we changed the names of them. He took feedback on all of that. And we as an executive team crafted our core values. And by the time we all left, we all felt really good about them. And I think it was one of the most crucial, important things that we did because all of us were so bought in. We felt like they were ours. And that's how we built a really, really incredible culture from the ground up was because of what you just said. So I can see that for sure. The third thing that you had mentioned was around the systems.
Yes.
I'm sure this is very different for you than in case like me, the companies I've gone in much smaller than the teams that you're leading, where I've found myself getting caught in the weeds of actually going in and fixing things. Like I did a fractional role with a team under 10 and I actually like in order to get some of the things done and there was lack of resources, I needed to go actually kind of do some of that. And then there's other times where I've been in bigger companies where they've got a team that I can have them do most of it. What was your what was your approach to going in and seeing, first of all, what systems weren't working? And how did you go about actually having those change? Because I've also seen systems get changed that end up making things worse, more complex, or it just wasn't the right decision in the first place. So how do you go about that when you first come into a company and you're overhauling systems?
Sure. So I think, the number one thing is systems are, another word for systems that I like to think of is tools. So, the systems are there as a tool. And if the tool works, great. And if the tool doesn't work, then that's a real challenge. And what happens is, the first thing I do is I talk to the teams and I talk to everybody on the team. So I talk to the teams that interact with a particular system. And I say to them, like, this is a tool to make your life easier. This is actually meant to improve your productivity. Is it working for you? Oh no, it's awful. I have to do all these workarounds. I have to cut and paste things into Excel spreadsheets, and then I have to input them back into the accounting system. And then it's sort of like, okay, I guess the tools aren't working. And I like to keep things very simple. So similarly, like you go to the mechanic and you say, what, can you change the oil in my car? Well, I can't. Why? Well, like, because I don't have the right tools. I have a pipe wrench. It's like, okay, so it's not that you're a bad mechanic and it's not that you don't know what you're doing. And it's not that you don't have the right skills. It's that you've got the wrong tool. You need these set of tools in order to do your job. And you've got a tool that doesn't work. So now you're going to sort of do a makeshift and try and make it work. So that's the number one thing. So that's the first question. The first question to everybody is, do you have the tools to actually improve productivity, or do you have tools that are actually making it slowing you down? And in many cases, they have the tools and everything's great. Or in some cases, they have the tools, they just need more training, which is really important. But in other cases, they have these strange workarounds where it's like, we don't even use that tool because it's useless. It's like, well, we pay for that. And like, there's a subscription for that and so on and so forth. And that's where, I find that quite frustrating because there's nothing worse than paying for these software systems and then they're not being used. So that's sort of the assessment phase. And then once we've assessed that, okay, these tools are working, great. Let's see if we can work them even harder. And let's see if we can get more training and get some power users and even increase productivity further. And then these systems, they're not working so well. So then let's decide to stop using these systems and let's look and see on the market if there's, improvements or better tools out there. And then we assess it and so on. But I do agree that like I've been through over the last 25 years, some massive system overhauls. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to change out a system just because you want the new shiny penny. Like that's where a lot of companies do make mistakes. and it ends up costing them, and they spend millions of dollars with all new software upgrades and so on. And then at the end of the day, they have to revert back to something old. So it's always about, if it's working, don't change it. But if it's not working for the team and it's not increasing productivity, then let's figure out a better way to increase the productivity. And the other key thing to systems solutions is, first figure out what the kind of task solution is. So what I always like to work out is, okay, what are we trying to do? Well, we need to make better budgets. We need to have a better PO system so that we can pay our vendors faster and that we can improve speed of construction. Okay, let's map that out. Not in a system, but let's map out all the different steps that have to happen to get from A to B and C and D and F. And then once we map that out, let's then go and look at systems that will make that the easiest. So, and if a system doesn't can't can't if a system goes A B C, but then it can't go from C to D, then it's let's not buy that system, because we got to get all the way to F. So let's sort of do that work, make sure that what we really need, that the system we're going to buy really works for us, and then let's implement that. You have to take a pretty kind of refined approach to it, and a disciplined approach. Otherwise, you can just end up spending endless amounts of money on tools that never get you anywhere. And then the other key thing is, and there's a huge thing that I believe very strongly in. I don't believe in custom systems. So that's the other thing. I think a lot of companies, especially young entrepreneurial companies, make the mistake of, well, we'll build our own system. We're going to build our own in-house software system. Um, why? Well, because we're that special. And it's like, no one's that special. Like IKEA uses the same accounting system that General Motors uses, and it's the same accounting system that JP Morgan uses. So if those companies can use the same accounting software, why do we need to create custom software? Like, no one's that special. So, and I think a lot of companies make a huge mistake with that, where they try and build custom tools. And then the biggest issue there is, when you hire new staff, they've never seen your system before. So whereas it's so much easier to say, hey, like, we use QuickBooks. So, and you put in your ad, we need people that have experience with the QuickBooks. Well, everybody knows what QuickBooks is, and there's people that have experience or don't have experience. Everybody knows what, Microsoft Office is. But if it's like, oh, we have Acme accounting system 101 that we built in house, it's like, oh, great. There's not a person on planet Earth who's going to know that system. So,
A core kind of word that's coming up to encapsulate that would just be simplicity.
yes.
Simple. And what you had mentioned around kind of doubling down on what's already working, that was something that you said, where you mentioned what's already working well, and like, can we do more with that thing? I Slack comes as an example. It's just like so easy to look at it as just a communication tool for teams. But the more that I have dug into what their capabilities are, there's a lot of other things that you can get rid of that you can just keep in Slack for a lot of different customer support and reporting, that now, especially with AI, they're doing even more so. And keeping your team from going to multiple platforms and you got to go over here and where do I do this? The simplicity, I think, is super, super valuable. Is there a Go ahead.
I was going to say, I agree. And I think what's interesting too is, to your point about Slack, which I think is a great platform. Another great platform is, we use Microsoft Teams. Is a lot of people don't realize the capabilities of this software. So people think, oh, Teams is just like, that's an alternative to Zoom. And it's like, not at all. Like, Teams is an incredibly powerful tool that, yes, can be used for video conferencing, but that's like 1% of its capabilities. Like, it's the capabilities around, file management, communication, team chats, all that. Like, there's literally an enormous amount of stuff. You can basically run a whole company out of Teams almost. And again, this is where it goes back to my point. Like, if software is working for us, let's make sure we use it to its full extent, because most companies and most individuals don't. So whatever software they choose, they'll be like, we like this, it works great. And it's like, you're using 20% of the capabilities. And if you sent some people for training and you created some power users within the organization, you could take that 20% and amp it up to 80 or 90%.
What's a power user?
So a power user is someone that that understands the software inside and out. So for instance, like a very common power user is with Excel. So there's a lot of people who are like, oh, I kind of know my way around Excel, and I can create some spreadsheets and create some budgets and so on. And then you'll have a power user come along and, you're like, do you understand what pivot tables are? I don't know. What's a pivot table? Never heard of that. Well, you could use these different tools, like we can create a bunch of macros to automate a lot of formulas that you're creating by hand. Oh, I didn't know you could do that. And that's a power user. So a power user is someone that I would suggest understands the software at least a 75 to 85% capability level, where they truly know how to, like, kind of like a virtuoso. So,
Got it.
like I can play the violin, sure, I'm okay. And then there's a virtuoso who's literally like a genius with the violin, and they're going to be able to teach you things that just an average player would never know. And within companies, power users are not part of IT. That's the other thing that's funny. Like people always, oh, that's the IT department. Like that's their responsibility. It's like, no, not at all. Anybody can be a power user. There's a great book by I think the former head of McKinsey, called I think it's called Talent Wins. It's a very short read. Everybody should read it. And it's literally about how there can be these incredibly talented and gifted people throughout your entire organization at all levels. And that, it's not always the senior vice presidents and the C-suite that are, the most talented people in the company. Sometimes the receptionist may be the most talented person in the company. Doesn't mean that he or she is going to become the CEO, but it means their contribution for what they do is actually more tremendous within their role because of the talent that they have, and what they bring to the table. And that's often, like, a power user is often someone that's a coordinator or a manager, and they know their software inside and out. And what you want to do is find those people and then reward them, and also explain that, hey, you go around the office and help everybody. So, like let's do some lunch and learns. You can be a very important person by helping everybody else use the tool 5% better, 10% better. So,
Very cool. I love that, power user. I'm gonna adopt that term. That's What about outside of Microsoft Teams, is there one other tool that you have found you just really love, you bring with you to every team that you're in?
yeah, well, I really like AI. So, I think that, and I think AI is something that everybody needs to start adopting. And I won't, call out a specific AI tool. I think we all know, there's so many now. But I think, like, I use AI every day, and I use it, in all aspects of my life. So I use it in my personal life. I use it in my business career. I use it, with respect to the boards I sit on. So I see AI as just, it's an intelligence tool, that can be great for everything. And when I say, in my personal life, I'll use it to decide what I'm going to cook for dinner, tonight, or if I where I want to go on a trip, or where the best things to do. We were just in the south of France, my wife and I, and we used AI, like, what are the best things to do in the south of France? Like, it's so it's not just solving business issues. It's just a fantastic tool, to augment your life. And I think that, what's interesting is, I think there's people who are really embracing it, and the people who embrace it are going to get ahead very quickly. And I think there's still a large, portion of the population. They're like, I don't know, I don't understand it, I don't trust it. And it's very similar to, I'm old enough to remember, a time before personal computers, and it's very similar, where there were, I was big into computers right from when they were first became available at an affordable price when I was a teenager. And I remember people like, computers, we don't need computers. Like, and these things are,
Wild.
well, they're like toys, and it's like, are you crazy? Like, if you don't understand how to use a computer, you're not going to be able to, do well in the workforce. And people were like, you're crazy. And now AI is more revolutionary than that, but it's facing the same kind of bit of backlash, where people are like, oh, AI, it's like only techies need to understand AI. It's like, no, every single living human being should understand the power of AI and should start using AI tools to get comfortable with
Mm. ChatGPT is like my best friend. So,
them.
I mean, truly, I'm on there.
GPT is like a friend. Yeah.
It's amazing. Like my refrigerator, my freezer went out yesterday and I texted my landlord and I'm like, the freezer went out again. I'm like, let me see if I can find like a serial number. And I just like send a picture of ChatGPT or to ChatGPT. And I'm like, my freezer broke. What could be wrong? And it just gave me all these things without having to bring a technician. And it's amazing. I mean, like I cannot imagine like if ChatGPT disappeared, I would not want to go back to typing out all of my SOPs on my own, even like creating my questions for my podcast. Like I could say that I sit down and I research and I come up with all of my questions on my own and I take 4 hours to prepare. It's not true. I take the data that I can find from the most important places. I give it the things that are the interests that I have, some key things that I picked out that I think would be helpful for this episode. I give it a framework. I have a project for it. All my podcasts are in there. I can draft up what I'm doing in literally like 5 minutes. And it's way better than I would have done in 4 hours. But when I was originally exposed to ChatGPT, it freaked me out. I was like, I don't know about this. And it took me probably like 6 months longer than it should have for me to adopt. So, yeah, for anyone that's listening, if you're still on the fence, time to get off the fence, download ChatGPT, start using it. I'm sure most of our listeners are probably like way deep in it now, especially as operations. You're constantly wanting to know what's the most efficient thing to do anyway. So good for you all for doing that. One thing that you had mentioned earlier was productivity. I'm actually reading a book right now. I cannot remember the title, but it's around productivity in teams. And he shows this graph of the research that they've done on actual output versus inputs. And it trends up after I think like it peaks at 2 hours in between hour 2 and hour 4, you have peak productivity, and then it drastically goes off. And the last like 4 hours of the day is like very minimal. Now, obviously, like different roles are different. Like if you're replying to customer support emails all day, you can probably maintain the same level of productivity. Excuse me. But in terms of more management, higher level decisions, where your brain power is really important, your creative juice is important, that dwindles, and I have found that for sure. What is your personal, like, breakdown of your day when you're in charge of so many important things, big projects, a large team? How do you make sure that you're focused on the right things at the right time, and do you work full 8 hours a day, 12 hours a day? What does that look like for you now at the stage you're in?
Sure. I've always been one of those individuals that was characterized as being hyper productive. So I have pretty extreme productivity, and I also, even though not everyone believes you can, I'm a big believer in multitasking. I don't think everyone's capable of multitasking, but there's theories out there that no human being can multitask, which I think is totally incorrect. I think human beings are capable of doing multiple things at the same time. It takes training, and you have to sort of train your brain for it. And to become hyper productive, you also have to sort of manage yourself in a certain way. So I'm pretty routine at this stage in my career, and what I mean by that is, the first thing I do when I wake up very early. So when I get up, the first thing I do is check all my online devices. So I check to make sure that nothing has gone wrong, in the night type of thing. So check emails, check Teams, check chat, check WhatsApp, so on. Quickly review the news for about 30 minutes while I have my coffee, and just sort of understand the state of affairs that I'm moving into for the day. Then I go exercise. So exercise is really important. So I'm a super avid cyclist. So I usually do between 50 and 70K kilometers, about 35 miles in the morning. So because I'm up at like 5 a.m. So after I do my coffee and my check-in to make sure there's no fires, then I go for my ride. And the reason I'm a big believer in that exercise first thing in the morning is you're a little groggy. Everybody's a little groggy when they get up, and you're in a little bit of brain fog. By the time you get back from 35 or 40 miles, there's no brain fog. You are like rip ready to go. Your heartbeat's been at 160 for an hour and a half, and you're fired up. So I come back, shower, put my suit on, and head to the office. And what's great about that is I'm not arriving at the office sort of like half asleep, one eye open, and headed to the coffee room. I'm arriving at the office totally pumped up and ready to go. So that's sort of part one. Part two is then, throughout the day, I'm there to work. So, again, coming from a sports background, I this will sound funny, but I haven't had lunch in 30 years. I don't have lunch for two reasons. One, I'm not hungry. And number two, I always look at it that, it's weird, but like in the middle of a hockey game, or in the middle of a baseball game, they don't just all walk off the field and go to lunch for an hour. Imagine the middle of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and it'd be like, where are all the guys going? Oh, well, they're going to go to lunch. They'll be back in about an hour and a half, and then they'll like play the rest of the game. It'd be like, huh? Sorry, what? And the reason I say it that way is because when you're at work and you're trying to be productive, you're in the field. So you're literally like on the sports field, you're in the arena, you're on the tennis court, and play as hard as you can, work as hard as you can, and then when you're out of your productivity, then rest. So I'm lucky. I'm able to work a full day, straight through lunch, and come 5 o'clock, then I'm done. Then I want to go home, relax, make a beautiful dinner, spend time with my wife, and I think so I really compartmentalize. It really is about first wake your body up, wake your brain up, and get going with exercise. Then get to work wherever you work as full and productive as you possibly can. And when you're ready to be done work, then rest and truly like turn work off. I think there's, and I think that is a it's kind of a very healthy approach, and it certainly has worked for me. I think where I feel people sometimes, you know, kind of get into a lull, and I talk to team members about this all the time and staff, is where they're kind of like, well, I kind of work for a bit and then I take a long lunch, and then it takes me a while to get back into it, but then I get a couple of good hours in, but then I got to go home, but it's okay because I'll put the kids to bed and then I'll turn my computer back on again. And it's like it's sort of haphazard. Like it's like there's never this sort of concentrated focus. And I think and I think again is goes back to sports. Same as training. Like if you're at the gym training, train for an hour and a half or an hour intensely, and you're going to get into great shape. 5 minutes on the treadmill, 10 minutes over at the water cooler, another 5 minutes skipping, and then 15 minutes getting a smooth. That's not really training. That's sort of so I think you have to ask yourself, and I think every individual should, like when you're working, are you in work mode, or are you kind of running through tasks, and in between tasks, you're kind of drifting? Uh, and I think if you're drifting, then that's why people find themselves being unproductive because they're like, I never really get into that focused, moment. And what's interesting is, again, people are like, you don't miss lunch. I'm like, I don't even know when. Like, I don't even think. Like, I'll poke my head up and be like, oh, it's 3:30 already. Like, it's not even a thing. Like, it's not like, well, don't you start getting hungry around 11:30? It's like I don't even know when 11:30 is. Like I'm doing this, then I'm doing this, then I'm doing this.
And so,
Like, yeah,
yeah, you're flowing with it. Well, the playing all out thing, I was listening to an episode that Sam Parr did with his co-host on My First Million, and they were doing an episode on like the main things that they've learned from billionaires that they've hung out with. And one of the guys, I cannot remember the name of this guy, but they said that the number one takeaway from him is that when he does anything, he does it 110%.
exactly.
Normally doesn't do a podcast, but he said yes, or normally doesn't, yeah, do a podcast or hang out with people for media stuff like what they were doing. And he said yes. And so these guys show up at his house, like interview him. And he's like, just stay with me all day. I've cleared my entire calendar. Like, how can we make it the best? And their takeaway from that was, even though he doesn't say yes to many of those, the ones that he does say yes to, he's going to make it the absolute best he can. And I think there's just so much value in what you said in your day. Like, I would much rather have 3 hours where I'm freaking on and I'm just like destroying it. I'm focused. I'm like not getting up. And that's kind of my tendency. I also like don't really eat very much. I have like usually like a pile of cashews. I've probably eaten, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of pounds of cashews because that's like what I eat to kind of give me a little bit of sustained energy during my day. And I'd rather have that than 8 hours of, like, whimsical, like, "Okay, I'm over here. Let me go, grab a snack." So, yeah, just playing all out, I think there's a lot to be said about that. a couple more questions here, and then we'll wrap up. But one of the things on your pre-form that you filled out, kind of your golden nugget, is this idea around causing things to happen rather than making things happen. Can you
Yes.
unpack that a bit?
Sure. So one of my earliest mentors when I first was well in one of the roles where I was president. So one of the founders of a company that I was president of, very big North American company. He uh, his advice to me, he was like, "You're great. You're an amazing president. You're incredibly productive. You're super brilliant." But he's like, I'm going to give you a sentence. He's like, you need to spend more time causing things to happen and less time making things happen. And this was said to me about 15 years ago, and I was like, okay, I got to think about that and unpack that. And I went home and I thought about it and thought about it, and I kind of got it. I'm like, okay, so a lot of people are excited about I'm going to make it happen. So I'm going to go to work and make it happen. And making things happen means that you're personally responsible for sort of pushing things forward. So you're going to go into the office and you're going to say to this staff member, you're going to do this and you're going to do that. And like, think about it like being a ship's captain, and you're telling everybody, look, this is your job, this is your job, this is your job. I'm making it happen. And a lot of people do that, and it's can be quite positive and productive, but it doesn't actually empower, and it doesn't allow people to learn or to teach, because what happens when you are focused on making things happen is you end up with a team that is always looking to you for direction. So if you're not there to give direction, they're then they're then sitting, they're waiting. They're like, well, what are you doing? Well, I don't know. What are you going to do next? I'm waiting for Christopher to tell me what to do next, because he always tells me what to do. And that's how we make things happen. Causing things to happen is the opposite. Causing things to happen is, as a leader, using the power of suggestion, the power of influence, the power of, opportunity to have people accomplish the things you want them to accomplish, but by doing it through their own volition, by providing an opportunity, providing a suggestion, providing some influence, and then letting the rest, kind of the magic happen. And it's really, it's really interesting. And a good example, and I'll use a very simplistic example, because people always say, well, show me how this works. And I'll be like, okay, so if you want to, let's go to a restaurant. Then restaurants are the easiest way to do this. So you and I will go to a restaurant. We'll have lunch together. We don't eat lunch, so we'll have dinner together. And, uh, we're out of water and we want more water, or we're out of wine, we want more wine. So we have two choices. We can make the water come. I can put my hand up and we can be like, "Hey, waiter, excuse me, busboy, I need water. Can you please bring the water?" That would be an example of making things happen. Or what you can do is just very subtly, you can take your empty water glass, your empty wine glass, and just move it to the edge of the table to where it's very obvious that it's empty. And miraculously enough, faster than if you were waving someone down, someone's going to show up and refill your water glass or ask you if you want more wine. Another similar example is at the end of the meal. We want to leave because we got to get to a meeting and we want to pay the bill. Again, we can be waving our arms and so on, and trying to make it happen. Make the server see you and make the server come over and give you the bill because you're demanding the bill. Or you can just subtly pull your American Express card out of your wallet, set it on the edge of the table, and keep carrying on your conversation, pay no attention to anybody else, and miraculously, the bill will just arrive exactly when you want it and how you want it. And that's and the great thing is, the beauty of causing things to happen is it's very non-confrontational. So in that instance, the waiter or the waitress or the server feels very good. They're like, "Oh, I see that table number 12 is ready to leave. I'm going to head over there, greet them nicely, let them pay their bill," as opposed to like having an altercation where it's like, "Hey, waitress, please come over." Oh, no, the guy's demanding I come over. Like, so you take the temperature of making things happen. When you cause things to happen, the temperature comes down, and it's just this nice, and what's amazing is when you get really good at it, people will do things. It's sort of similar to what you said about, your relationship. Uh, by positively expressing yourself when your boyfriend did good things, you were causing things to happen, as opposed to telling him. So, hey, I really like it when we go out to dinner. Okay, that's trying to make him take you to dinner. Whereas when you do go out to dinner, saying, you know what, that was really amazing. You know, when we went out 2 weeks ago, that was I really enjoyed. I still have fond memories of that. That will sit in his brain and be like, you know what, I should do that again. So that's power of suggestion causing things to happen. So if I use the technique every day. I think about it a lot, and I think, and I'm always passing it on. When anybody ever asks me for mentorship about how do I become a better leader, I always say, really think about how how things happen around you, and can you cause things to happen in a certain way without ever vocally demanding them, or without ever giving a verbal instruction. And that's the secret. And the beauty is, as leaders, the less we tell people what to do, the happier they are. People don't want to be told what to do.
That was absolute gold.
Great.
I am definitely taking that one away for sure. Speaking of things happening, what are you most excited about in the next 6 months?
Well, you're gonna laugh. I'm gonna give a funny answer, and then I'll give a more realistic answer. So
We like funny. Funny is good.
the the funny answer is, I'm looking forward to Trump and Canada coming up with a trade deal. S- that's really what I'm most excited about. Is let's put the tariffs behind us and get back to being great neighbors like we have been for the last 150 years. So that would be great. But also, in more specifically from a business perspective, I'm actually, again, we talked about this briefly, but I'm really, really excited about what's going to happen over the next 6 months and over the next 12 months with artificial intelligence. And I think that, we're just starting to see the giant leaps that are going to happen. And I think it's just incredible. It's one of those things where 6 months ago, there were certain capabilities compared to today. But when we see what the future is going to hold the next 6 months, it's going to be just amazing, especially with respect to, I think, people's, like what it can do around medical science, healthcare, mental health, helping people, with diets and exercise and all sorts of things. Like, I think it can really be an amazing coach to help, human beings, live happier, better lives. And what's great about it is it's very affordable. Like, having a personal coach is expensive. ChatGPT is like free. So, and there's so many other tools out there. And I also think that, generally speaking, the happier we can all be as a society, the more productive we become. So that's always number one for me. At the end of the day, I always say this to my, whenever I have a team member that is going through something difficult or needs some time off, or, they have, sick kids or anything like that. I'm always like, don't worry about it. Like, you have to take care of your family first, your personal life first. Like, because if that's not good, you're not gonna perform well at the office. So if you need to take some time to get that sorted out, take all the time you need, because I need you to have the happiest possible out of work life you can, so that when you do show up on the field or on the court, that you're ready to go, raring to go, just like a star athlete. And I think that's a mistake that again, I think a lot of employers and a lot of leaders, they're like, nope, that person is mine from 9 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock at night. I don't care what they do the rest of the time, but those 8 hours, they're mine, and they better be productive. And it's like, no, you got to think beyond that. You really have to think about the person as a holistic person, because if that person's happy and healthy and comfortable, they're going to put in so much more work for you than if they're just stressed and, kind of showing up to check a box, so to speak.
Amazing, amazing advice. If anyone wants to connect with you, where would be the best place for them to do that?
They can reach out to me by email. CWEIN at equiton.com, or follow me on LinkedIn. I have a big LinkedIn following. I'm on LinkedIn every day, and I do respond when people message me on LinkedIn. So I think it's an
We
incredible.
connected on LinkedIn
We did.
and you responded.
Exactly. No, I think it's one of the greatest networking tools. I love LinkedIn. So, and it's a great way to communicate and meet new people. So.
Absolutely. Well, Christopher, thank you so much. You were so generous in your time and your wisdom. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, and you have a wonderful day and enjoy Austin.
You too.